You're standing in a room you've never been in, having a conversation you've never had, and suddenly your entire body knows with absolute certainty that this exact moment has already happened before. For 2 or 3 seconds, you're not entirely sure what's real. And here's the genuinely unsettling part. Neuroscientists still don't fully agree on what's actually malfunctioning inside your brain when this happens, only that something, very briefly, glitches. Let's start with what déjà vu actually is, because the term itself is almost deceptively simple. French for already seen, déjà vu describes the eerie sensation of familiarity in a situation your rational mind knows is genuinely new. It's not a memory. You can't point to when it supposedly happened before. It's a feeling of having remembered without any actual memory attached to it, which is exactly what makes it so disorienting. Roughly 60 to 70% of people report experiencing déjà vu at some point in their lives, most commonly between the ages of 15 and 25, with frequency oddly declining as people get older. A detail that itself hints at something developmental happening in the brain, rather than something purely random. So what's actually going on inside your skull? For decades, one of the leading theories has centered on a structure buried deep in your brain called the temporal lobe, specifically a region involved heavily in memory processing called the hippocampus, alongside a neighboring structure called the rhinal cortex, responsible for that specific sensation of familiarity, separate from actual memory recall. Here's where it gets genuinely fascinating. Neurologist Josef Spatt, along with other researchers studying epilepsy patients, discovered that individuals with a specific type of temporal lobe epilepsy frequently report intense déjà vu sensations immediately before a seizure begins. In fact, some epilepsy patients describe it as one of the earliest, most reliable warning signs that a seizure is imminent. Using electrode recordings placed directly on brain tissue during pre-surgical evaluations, researchers have been able to electrically stimulate the rhinal cortex directly and, remarkably, trigger the sensation of déjà vu on command in patients who are otherwise fully conscious and aware nothing unusual is actually happening around them. Think about what that actually proves. If researchers can trigger the exact feeling of "this has happened before" by stimulating one specific brain region using nothing but an electrical pulse, then déjà vu isn't some mystical experience or a glimpse into a parallel timeline. It's almost certainly a memory-related circuit misfiring, an isolated glitch in the specific neural pathway responsible for generating the feeling of familiarity, triggering without any actual matching memory behind it. This connects to a second, equally compelling theory involving something researchers call dual processing. Under normal conditions, your brain processes incoming sensory information, then separately compares it against your existing memories in a specific, sequential order. The dual processing theory suggests that occasionally, these two processes fall very slightly out of sync. One hemisphere of your brain processing a scene a fraction of a second before the other, creating a bizarre neurological illusion where the second, slightly delayed signal gets misread as a completely separate, older memory, even though the actual gap between the two signals is likely measured in mere milliseconds. There's also a specific piece of evidence supporting this theory that sounds almost like something out of science fiction. Researchers studying visual processing have found that déjà vu occurs more frequently in situations involving very brief, split-second glances. Moments where your peripheral vision registers a scene fractionally before your focused, conscious attention catches up and processes it fully. In other words, part of your brain may have technically already seen the room before your conscious mind fully caught up and registered it, creating that unnervingly specific sensation of prior familiarity for an experience that, in objective reality, is happening for the very first time. That delay, some researchers argue, might be the entire mechanism behind the unsettling, almost Matrix-like quality déjà vu carries, the sense that reality briefly glitched, repeated a frame, or skipped a beat, because in a very literal, measurable, neurological sense, it kind of did. Your conscious experience of now isn't actually instantaneous. It's assembled milliseconds after the fact by a brain constantly stitching together sensory information into something that feels seamless. And déjà vu might be one of the rare moments where you briefly catch a glimpse of the seams. There's a third, more recent theory worth mentioning too, championed by researchers like cognitive psychologist Anne Cleary, who has spent years specifically studying déjà vu in laboratory settings. Cleary's research suggests déjà vu might actually be your brain's memory checking system working exactly as intended, a kind of internal error correction process. Detecting that the current scene shares subtle, specific similarities with a genuinely different memory you can't consciously recall, similar furniture layout, comparable lighting, and analogous conversation structure, without your conscious mind ever accessing the original source memory directly, leaving you with only the eerie feeling of familiarity and none of the actual content. So, after decades of study, what's the honest scientific consensus? It's probably not one single mechanism. It's likely some overlapping combination, a memory familiarity circuit briefly misfiring, a split-second processing delay between competing neural pathways, and a genuine, if subconscious, pattern-matching system flagging real similarities your conscious mind never fully registers, all producing the exact same unsettling output, certainty without evidence. Which means that eerie, unshakable feeling that reality just glitched isn't a glimpse into some parallel timeline or a message from a past life. It's your own brain, quietly, imperfectly, doing exactly what it evolved to do, cross-referencing the present against the past at extraordinary speed, and every so often getting caught for just a fraction of a second in the act. So here's a question worth sitting with. If your brain can convincingly manufacture a false sense of familiarity in less time than it takes to blink, how much of what you'd swear feels certain right now is actually something your brain quietly assembled after the fact and simply never told you about? If this made you rethink your last déjà vu moment, subscribe. Because next time, we're diving into an even stranger mystery, the Denisovans, the human species we barely understand. Let me know below, what's the strangest déjà vu moment you've ever had? See you then.